We've got former State Department Press Officer Morgan Ortagus back with us, and Army Special Forces veteran Ben Collins. We'll also be giving you a global market reaction as well as our own market reaction. Again, keep in mind he had a message he was sending to those abroad as well, particularly in North Korea, that we will not countenance activity like this sort of thing or terror in general, no matter how and who inspires it. So Ben Collins, your thoughts?
Well, Neil, I thought he certainly said certain things that were very new that we haven't heard from a president before. He clearly stated, and I think from a soldier's perspective, when he said that we're going to give the soldiers on the ground a clear and concise definition of what it is that we expect them to accomplish.
Which is what?
And, well, at this point, that's going to be the big question, right? So there is a big move by saying a couple things. One, that he is going to allow more troops to go there. Number two, it's the first time a president has actually stood there and called Pakistan out publicly and said, enough is enough, we're going to come after this. And even though it sounded like the president was speaking to India as well, when he was making the remarks about how closer we were going to get to India, he was actually talking to Pakistan there as well. So nothing gets under Pakistan's goat even more so than the idea of us getting closer with India. But to me, the president said, look, this isn't open-ended. Things haven't been clear. They haven't been concise. I am going to allow more troops. But look, anybody looking at this should understand we weren't able to achieve what the definition of victory was traditionally with 130,000 troops. You know, we were able to tamp down the Taliban, but we were trying to hold territory ad infinitum and create this from the ground up, this society that just is never possible in a place like Afghanistan that is so local and so tribal. So I think what he has listened to the generals, and he's going to allow a troop increase. They're going to have to change their operational tactics as well. What is it that they're going to try to accomplish in the battlefield? And he did say, look, there's going to be metrics that we're going to look at, and if certain conditions are met on the ground, then we can move to another cause. But for right now, I think that was a great speech that he gave. It certainly highlighted things that we haven't heard before.
You know, Morgan, it's interesting, and I sometimes see things not exclusively, but tangentially through the markets, particularly Asian markets, which could interpret this, all right, well, he's not forgetting what's happening in our neck of the woods. He's not forgetting what's happening in North Korea. He is linking bad guys the world over and sending a message to them. But would a commitment or a verbal commitment to an undisclosed number of troops, we're told a few thousand to 4,000, does that do the job? Now, obviously, judging from their early reaction, it's tepid. I don't want to glean anything more than that. Is it really that reassuring?
Is the 4,000 troops reassuring is your question. Are 4,000 more troops going to win a war in Afghanistan that hasn't been won in 17 years? I mean, the short answer is no, but I don't think that that's the entire strategy. I think that the president made it clear, he repeated over and over again that we're switching from a time-based approach to a conditions-based approach. There's not, I would venture to say there's not a commander that was working in Afghanistan when President Obama made his announcement at the beginning of his administration that wasn't frustrated and blindsided by the timeline that President Trump was critical of tonight that President Obama gave, because it's simply...
In other words, you let the enemy know what you were going to be doing.
It's just go hide behind the mountain and wait for us to come back. I mean, it's basically, wait for us to leave is basically what you're saying when you give timelines. So I thought there was a few really key things as somebody who, you know, I was just in Afghanistan a few months ago in Kabul, and it's interesting to me that he talked about India and getting them more involved in the region. I stood on top of the American University of Afghanistan on the roof, and I looked over and saw the new parliament that actually India paid for and bought for the Afghan government. It was also crucial that the president tonight talked about his support for the Afghan government, because there's been a lot of debate in the media about whether we were going to continue to support the central government or whether we'd be going at more of a tribal-based approach, which is traditionally what the government was. So there's a presidential election next year in Afghanistan. Ashraf Ghani is the current head of the government, with Abdullah the CEO of the government, which is a great title. I want to be the CEO of a government, but that it was a big win for Ashraf Ghani as well, because that gives him some much-needed support at home. Because, you know, we're seeing, when the president said that we're seeing Pakistan support Taliban and other networks, he's talking about networks like the Haqqani network that we have accused in the Afghanistan, people have accused the Pakistanis of supporting them. We're getting into a lot of nuance in the region that I don't know that everyone will get into, but it's important to know that the attacks that we've seen recently, that we saw right after I left Kabul in March, the attacks are largely executed by groups that are funded and provided support by the Pakistanis. So if I'm the Pakistanis tonight, I'm really worried in the sense that this is a direct change in policy. He called them out to the world. If I'm in India, the same thing. The one thing
You're
that I love,
putting the world on notice.
Absolutely.
We should say that the president also said, we are not expanding a war. We are fighting terrorists. We are not nation building. We are essentially going after the worst elements that create our headaches here, paraphrasing here. But the president did warn against a hasty withdrawal. I want you to listen to this.
A hasty withdrawal would create a vacuum that terrorists, including ISIS and Al-Qaeda, would instantly fill, just as happened before September 11th.
All right, I want to bring Walid Phares into this, the administration's former foreign policy advisor on these and other security issues. And Walid, the one thing that struck me is I don't think after 16 years a departure would be considered hasty, but what he was saying was the way we're going about it and the signal we would be sending would be, right?
Right. Actually, the president was very clear on 3 points, less clear on a fourth, and there was a fifth point that was not even there. Let me go quickly. Clear point number one is that we need to change the course and then refuse to leave quickly or hastily because that would lead to the erection of a new Taliban state or ISIS. That's understandable. Two, he, of course, for the first time spoke about Pakistan. Something has to change in Pakistan, and he has a point here, because some of these networks have support base. It does not mean that the government of Pakistan itself is the one that is launching them, but it is tolerating some of them. Another point was India. First time we hear in Washington that India needs to play a role. Economic, non-economic, we'll see. Now, the point that was not clear is the actual measurement of how we win in Afghanistan. It seems that the president had listened to an advice that says if we weaken the Taliban to a point, they may even come to government. That is something that will be debated, I think, both in Washington and elsewhere. And the last point, which was not mentioned, what do we do about the ideology? Because if we defeat the jihadists militarily, and we did many times in Iraq, and we did many times in Afghanistan, it is the madrasas, it is that network of jihadists that will bring them back. That needs a political dimension. It seems that the president has been told that we're not building, but what about countering the ideology? I would say these are the 5 most important points.